All right, so this is a new talk for me, but it's stuff that I've thought about and talked about for a long time. So I have been a content strategist since 1999. Before that, I was in magazine publishing and I was a copywriter for a cosmetics company, and then discovered the internet. But since 1999, I've been doing content strategy work, and I work with what I call content-rich organizations. So you can see the list, and I do content strategy work. I mentor people, I teach courses, and I've spoken at a ton of different conferences over the years. Um, so here's the agenda, which was in the email you got, and hopefully why you're here today. And these are, again, things I've been thinking about for a long time. So I wanted to start with a little bit of validation. So what we do as content folks, which is such a great name for this group, what we do is really important, right? Because better content helps organizations achieve their business goals. It helps the audiences facilitate their goals and achieve their goals. And better content is easy for audiences to find, understand, and use. So these are things that we all know, that we advocate for, that we spend our days working on and thinking about and advocating for. However, for the most part, organizations don't think of what they produce as content. So since I have been in this field, and I keep everything. I'm a terrible personal content hoarder. So I have old email threads and old discussions and old articles. So forever, people have been talking about the trouble with this word content. And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today because of this thing. Organizations don't think of what they produce or even what we produce as content. So we're busy saying, hey, I can make your content better. And this is the reaction we often get. So does this resonate with people? Anybody want to chime in or anything to add so far? So we're speaking two different languages. This is my point here. We're talking about I can make your content better, which is true. And they think, oh, well, leave me alone. I don't need my content to be better. I just need my results to be better. So here's some examples of all kinds of organizations and people and consultants that talk about the work they do. And even me, this one's my this middle one is a little snapshot of my website. So this is what we say we do, but are these words, are these concepts presented like this going to resonate with the people we're trying to talk to? And I think a lot of times they don't, and we don't. And clearly this is what that middle one is what's on my website. So clearly it's something that I haven't perfected either. Oh, there's chat here. Good. Yes, yes, yes. Content is too often seen as nice to have, not essential. Yes, all true. So the definition that I learned, the definitions that I've learned for content strategy is getting the right content to the right person at the right time for the right action, or this one, which I actually prefer, and I've enhanced it a little bit. So content strategy is the practice of planning for the creation, delivery, and governance of useful and usable content. And I added the word effective. Useful means it's relevant for people. Usable means they're able to use it. And effective, which I always felt was missing, is that it achieves a goal. But again, I think we're speaking to ourselves with a lot of these definitions. Content design, same thing. So does a business executive understand what it means when we say content design? And what we do is answering a user need in the best way for the user to consume it. So the language we use to talk about our work is correct, absolutely correct. But is it truly resonating with the audiences we want to talk to? And so this is one of the ways that I've gotten around this dilemma. When I say content strategy, people who, plan events in the associations that I work with, the folks inside, the subject matter experts, plan all kinds of programs. They create industry standards and guidelines for a particular profession. They might create research that folks in the profession can use. They plan meetings, they offer courses. All of that's content. I know that. And again, you all know that on this call, but they don't know that. And so they think, oh, you're talking content strategy. You must be trying to talk to the marketing folks. And and I said, no, no, no. I'm talking to everyone. And this work that we're going to do together usually is relevant to what all of you do. And this is the way that I talk about it. So content is the way that our work is manifested in the world. And if you have work that's manifested in the world some way, it's words and pictures and audio and video, AKA content. So I put this on LinkedIn recently because I thought it was really good. Your content is not the goal. Your content is the solution. So this is another way to sort of get around that. The goal is to achieve a particular user outcome. And here's the part that I wonder whether all of you agree with. And that outcome is usually not to successfully complete a task. I almost deleted that part because I feel like a lot of times for content design, the outcome is to complete a task. But I think that it's a task, it's not about the task, it's about the outcome. It's not about the act of filing immigration papers, it's about being able to immigrate. It's not about going through the procedure of getting a driver's license, it's about getting to drive. And I think that's the distinction. So, what do you think? Is this true for you? Anybody? If not, I'll move on.
I'll jump on quickly. I think sometimes people need a little bit of time to kind of formulate if they want to write it in the chat.
Yeah.
Um, I love this distinction, and I think it kind of gets into the topic of yeah, what's the overall overarching goal of the user? It's not kind of like that kind of content designer patch necessarily. And sometimes, depending on the role, depending on the place, you might find that the content person has to think about absolutely everything, or sometimes there's other people in other roles who can take on part of that heavy lifting of thinking about the whole end to end, if that's what we want to call it. So, but I love that distinction about the content isn't the goal, it's the solution.
Yes. Um,
Got a
yes.
couple of comments in the chat if you want to read them out for the sake of the recording.
Yes, that's what I'm just looking at. Outcomes are also tied to how you make people feel about their interaction. That's absolutely true. We forget about the full journey beyond the web page. So this is important. So this is the same dilemma that a lot of writers had because people don't realize that it's not about, putting the comma in the right place. It's about getting a concept across effectively. Um, it's easy to forget that there's a wider goal and a wider service. Yes, yes, yes. Sometimes mean understanding before applying, and sometimes it's offline. Absolutely. So when we talk about goals, I often have that conversation with clients because there is a famous quote from an early uh, what's his name? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on the guy's name, but it said, he said, page views are not the goal is the goal. And it's the same thing. Mike, shoot, can't think of his name. Anyway, so yes, thinking about the outcomes and then making decisions about the content in order to achieve the outcome, and then circling back and find out, did the better content improve the results of the outcome for the business and or for the user? Because if the user's not successful, the business certainly can't be successful, but the other might not be true. So that bigger context is so, so, so important. So what do we preach when we talk to ourselves, when we talk to other content designers, when we, folks, consultants or whatever, talk to anybody creating content, we preach, make sure you know who your audience is, understand why they want what you offer, use their terminology, and establish measurable goals for your content, and then take the time to measure it and evolve as necessary. So these are kind of the basic constructs of what content strategy and content design does and is. So we need to apply this, right, to ourselves because we're cobbler's children, I think. Let's see what's in the chat. Yes. So we need content strategy and content design for ourselves and for our own work and for our profession. So I don't know whether content strategy and content design is one profession or two, so I put it that way. But we need to apply the same kinds of principles that we advise and execute for our clients and our employers for ourselves. So this is what I wanted to talk about, right? So who is your audience? And I think there's a difference between who you wish will hire you or buy your services or who's actually going to hire you and buy your services. And I think, you know, there's the dilemma about then who are we talking to, right? So are we talking to business executives? Are we talking to IT executives, digital executives, creative executives, or subject matter experts and stakeholders? I don't know what you call them. Probably it varies from person to person here. So, and then I just took a stab at thinking about why they need you. So this is what matters to them. So business executives think about the bottom line. IT people think about platforms. They think about the technology completion. This was just like a thought from, because I'm not any of those people. I don't play those roles myself. Digital executives care about, is the website done? Did it, meet its launch date? Creatives tend to think about visual beauty as well. Marketing folks think about leads, subject matters, experts think about the programs that they run. And you might disagree. And so we're going to talk about these concepts more. And if you do disagree, I hope that you say so, because this is just my own personal interpretation and theories about these. So this is what matters to them. And hint, they probably don't care about content, or they don't think they do. So when we talk about, what's important to them, we can't be talking about, well, our content is this and that. So for a business executive, we're saying, I can make your content better. And as we saw before, he's saying, leave me alone. I need to improve my results. And I have examples of what to do later. And again, you might have better ideas than me. For IT people, if we say, I can make your content better, they're saying, sorry, I'm busy approving a budget for a new system, a new platform. I'm migrating, God forbid. Digital executives, yes, they don't care about the processes and governance. Yes, of course they don't. That's not their job, right? Digital executives might be saying, I'm sure the content is fine, and I want to make sure we launch on time. The content that they got before you got involved. That's what I meant by that. Plus, AI can take care of whatever adjustments we need. Sorry. This isn't these are not good, but I think it's reality. Have any of you heard responses like this when you've talked to people? Find a lot of people involved in web development caring a lot about the design and have a lot of thoughts on this, even if they're not their specialty, and content gets forgotten about. Yep. Can we make it look more dynamic? I know. Yes. Creatives might be looking at the design templates, right? The words already fit the design template, so we're good. Fine as is. Marketing people, I've already mapped out my campaign to generate the most leads, so we're all set. So their concerns we're not speaking to these people in a way that resonates with them. So subject matter experts who run different programs might be focused on whether the program is succeed. And this is kind of the closest, I think. So what terms do they use? If they're not using content, what are they using? Right? So their business executive is concerned about the bottom line. So they're looking at terms like ROI. So if you want to talk to the business executive, you want to talk about that. For an IT person, they might be thinking about systems and structures, and maybe the closer overlap is in something like taxonomy. Digital executives might be talking about omni-channel. Creatives about team collaboration, maybe if we're lucky. Marketing executives focused really on leads, and the subject matter experts are focused on maybe collaboration and partnership for results. So here is what I think might be better conversations. So if the business executive is saying, I need to improve my results, then you come in and say, hey, I can help improve your bottom line. I mean, you might say with content, but again, content is the means of how you're going to do it for the purpose of talking to a person in a role like that. An IT executive might say, I'm busy approving a budget for a new system. What might you say? Does anyone have any thoughts before I show mine? This is where I'm hoping we have some interaction just to have ideas. If somebody said to you, like if you're talking to an IT executive and that's the person who is your potential client or your potential hiring manager, what might you say as a content designer or content strategist? I can help you make sure the system is useful and easy to use. Let's see what mine was. Yep. So it's a slight shift, but it's more focused on them, right? So this is applying content design, content strategy principles to our own work. So the digital person says, I'm sure the content's fine and I want to make sure we launch on time. Any thoughts about what we might say? All right, here's my thought. Oh, plus AI can take care of whatever adjustments we need. So these are the same quotes from earlier, applied in a different situation. So then you can say, hey, I can create compelling omni-channel ready content better and faster than AI, which is true. A creative might say, hey, the stakeholders approved the design templates and the words fit, so yeah, we're good. And you say, I'll work within your design template and with your stakeholders to make the product or experience shine. And all of you might say, oh my gosh, these are terrible comebacks. And I'd love to hear better ones, because I don't think that any one of us is perfect. So I think that putting our heads together will make these better. And I'm hoping we can talk about it more later. So for a marketing person who says, I've already mapped out my campaign to generate the most leads, you might say, I will help your campaign produce more high quality leads. So, and you can say, because I'll use terms that resonate with the audience, that I will, make the content easier to read, whatever it is, but you're specifically focusing on the things that are important to them. again, just like we do in our work itself. For a subject matter expert, and again, I think this is the easiest gap to leap over. So the subject matter expert says, I'm focused on whether my program succeeds, and I trust the design and tech teams to know what they're doing. And you say, I'll make it easier for people to find, understand, and use or buy your program. So here's another comment in the chat. I found that working with others at any level is simply to understand, A, how does this person measure success in their job in the organization? Yep. And B, what can I provide to help them connect this content work to their own success metrics? Yes. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So because businesses need what we do, and what we do helps them, but we need to jump over the leap and translate what we do and the benefit of working with us to things that matter to them. So for success for us is that organizations understand our value, that we get hired and we get retained even if a business goes through challenges. And so the takeaways are all the stuff we've talked about already, right? Know who you are addressing, get familiar with their priorities and concerns, and what David just said, right? How do they measure success? How do you help them connect the content work to their success? Understand what need they think you are filling. So you're not filling a comma police kind of gap. You're filling a translation of getting what they do out there in the world so that the folks who it's for can find it, understand it, and use it. And use terms that are going to resonate with them and make sure you're addressing their goals. And that's all I've got for you. So I'm going to stop sharing.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Hilary. Yeah, loads of really interesting thoughts there. And I think it's I love your kind of framing of this is applying what we do for others, but to ourselves. And it's just like, yeah, when you think about it in those terms, it seems really simple, but obviously it isn't.
Right.
And it's quite a mental hurdle, I think, to jump over.
But in a way, it gives us more empathy for how challenging it is for other people to see the value of our work. I gave you perfectly fine content. I put it through spell check. Why isn't it fine already? Because they already worked on it. And so they don't understand why coming out of a subject matter expert's head, it's not already ready for public consumption. So sometimes we need to team up with each other to say, is that going to make any sense to someone who isn't in our profession? Just the same as we do for our own employers or our own clients.
Great. We've got some questions coming through. So yeah, feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute if you like. So we've got Jess Harris saying, what are your thoughts on pair writing, Hilary?
Pair writing is a great way to practice this exact thing.
And
I was just thinking
explain
about
what that is for people who may not know what pair writing is?
Oh, pair writing is actually having a content person and a subject matter expert create content together. So it's really making the most of both of their sets of expertise together at the same time. So that it's not the subject matter expert just writes it, throws it over the wall, and then has to like wait and see, did the content person get it right? Did they do it well? Did they take something that used to be correct and make it wrong? Now I have to go back and fix it again. But if you both are at the same computer, working on the same document together, ideally physically present together, then it both works for the subject matter and works for the audience. So it's a very good idea.
While we're waiting for more questions, I had one that's possibly a spicy topic. So you mentioned AI, and obviously that's the big thing at the moment, and there's lots of drama around it, and some people think it's going to be the answer to everything, other people don't. What are your thoughts broadly on it?
I think AI is fine for a rough draft. It's fine for idea generation. I don't tend to use it very much myself. Um, but it's certainly not, it is not ready for public consumption without human intervention. So it's a fine
If
start.
yeah, if you encounter a stakeholder who thinks it is and is very keen for it to replace yeah, any kind of content designer input or content strategist input, um how would you kind of help them understand that it's not actually that great solution?
I would, first of all, test it, so put it through the same kind of testing you would for any other kind of content. And second of all, read it to make sure that it isn't completely uh, wrong, completely inaccurate. Because a lot of times I think it is.
Yeah. We have Lee Baker saying, one big challenge in
Yes.
some organizations is that when you say content, they think immediately of marketing content. And so they want it to sound exciting. How to deal with this?
Um, this is a huge issue for, again, for our profession. Um, in the association profession, there's a textbook that you read when you go to get certified as a certified association executive. And I'm revising the chapter on content strategy. Um, and the woman who is the editor agrees that all too often people think of content as marketing content. And marketing content's fine and they need their own content strategy for that, but that's not what most of us do, nor really what I'm talking about in this presentation or in any of the work that I do. And so uh, I think that content strategy is often missing a word because content strategy for technical content is a thing. Content strategy for e-commerce content is a thing. Content strategy for marketing content is a thing. But I think the description of the types of content that I talk about would be knowledge content. And that's a useful distinction, and that's how I'm reframing the chapter because that's the content that is created by subject matter experts for, people who are interested in the subject matter but aren't yet experts. Um, so I don't know if that is a good description for the kind of government content design tasks that I think about. And so maybe task-oriented content is another thing. So I think that the phrase content is incomplete, or the
Yeah.
term content is incomplete.
And I love that you're in a position that you can actually do something practical about that as well. That's
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah. And they want it to sound exciting. So think about like getting a driver's license content. That's not supposed to be exciting. Its job is not to be exciting. It's to be clear. Or content about a new practice in cardiology of some kind, right? That was a client that I had, the American College of Cardiology. And so they have new guidelines about how to treat a patient with a particular condition. That is not sexy. It's not supposed to be sexy. It's supposed to be clear so that a doctor can read it, learn it, and apply it. Knowledge content is a good term. I know. I want to use it more and more.
Yeah,
Knowledge
I think
content.
it's a good term as well. Let's make that a thing.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions for Hilary?
Has anybody encountered situations in any of those conversations that that I portrayed in like the little speech bubbles? Like, have you found that you're sort of talking to a brick wall when you're talking to folks in other sorts of roles?
I mean, I certainly have while we're waiting for people to write their
Yeah,
chat. Yes, again and again. And I think it depends a lot on the organization, but certainly, so for instance, I think there'll be a few people on the call who maybe work in higher education. I used to work at a university in the department that looked after the content on the website, and it was a constant battle of people who just had had their ways of working and had done certain things a certain way for a long time, and it's quite a challenge to shift that perception.
Yes. Um,
We have we have a few, we've got some questions and then responses to your question in the chat. So
yes.
from Simon Williams, who says, I find there is a challenge when working with legal teams. They're reluctant to change language.
Um, the question that I always ask, because when I work with an organization like the American College of Cardiology, I don't know anything about the profession. I don't know anything about cardiology, about how hearts work, and I don't need to. The question that I ask them is, does your audience understand this term? Because that's what you want to know. And if they do, then we're good. But if they're looking for heart attack and you're using the term cardiac arrest, there's no match there. So we can call it SEO, but really it's about talking about things that your audience is going to understand. And if you're talking to doctors, cardiac arrest is great. If you're talking to consumers, it's not. Or cardiac infarction, like really technical terms. So legal terms and legal teams and subject matter experts, they know a lot, but the audience doesn't know what they know, and so they have to think about. So I used to call it the mom test. If you were talking about this concept to your mom, how would you explain it? And that's helpful because everybody's been in that position of having to translate what they do for their mom. But somebody said, oh, that's too sexist. You can't use the mom as an example, but think about a relative. Use a different example, and put your content through the mom test or through the neighbor test or whatever name you might give it.
I've got
Yes.
a few more comments on the issue
So,
of, yeah,
so
yeah.
one of the things I'm seeing in the questions, and I agree 100%, I tell people that my job is asking questions, and it's annoying. I agree, because nobody likes to be questioned, and um, and yet the questions are to draw out what they know so that you can talk about it and write about it better and help them put out their thing in a way that's going to resonate with the audience. And that's why one of the things that I always do as part of every project is build in a step that's an audience focused or an audience prioritization exercise. So I do it with personas still, even though personas are imperfect, but to get people putting themselves in the audience's shoes and going through exercises to brainstorm what's important to them, what makes them tick, um, what is true for them, what media do they use, so you can see what formats and what channels they use most, so that then you can say, well, they're not reading 42-page PDFs. They're looking at TikTok. They're looking at shorter. They're looking at zippier. They're looking at different kinds of formats and different kinds of channels. And so if you want to reach them in a way that's comfortable and resonating with them, then that's how you do it. You have to join them where they are, not where you wish they are. And so it's the same thing I talked about for our own profession, that who actually hires you versus who you wish would hire you. If you're going to get hired by a director of content design, you talk inside baseball language. That is great. But if you're going to get hired by somebody who is 2 or 3 steps removed from that, you can't do it. So it's the same thing if there's a new industry guideline, or a standard of practice in your industry. You're not talking expert to expert, you're talking expert to beginner. And you have to help that beginner go through their own journey. And that's the conversation to have with these internal subject matter experts about that, because you are not your audience. And so we have to help your audience really understand and use this wonderful material who you know. So earlier in my career, I gave a talk, and instead of breaking down silos, I said we have to respect the silos because this internal subject matter experts are critical, right? They're so, so, so important, but their work is not ready for public consumption directly out of their heads because they're too smart. They know all the jargon. They use all the jargon. They use all the dense terminology. And instead we have to help be their translator.
Yep. I've just make sure we don't lose it in the chat. There was a question here from Abby who says, how do you approach working with stakeholders when projects have already started? So it's hard to retrospectively be part of a piece of work.
There's this concept of next time. So I think you do what you can do this time. I mean, I remember when I I used to work for a really large association in the United States, and we would get these projects like, hey, I promised the committee that we would mail out this 42-page PDF on Monday. Could you just put it up on the website? And the answer is, well, sure, we can, but we shouldn't. So this time I'll do it, but next time the way to work with us better so that we can really be your ally and partner is to work with us sooner, to involve us sooner, because we can't fix the content at this point. And you might do a before and after, you might do improving part of it or improving something that you would do if you were brought in early enough and sort of correctly as a partner and not a vendor sort of executor. So that's the other thing, is to help them see you as a partner.
Yeah, and actually to that point as well, why do they want people to look at this 42-page PDF? Like, what is their goals? To come back to kind of the point you made earlier, because maybe the solution that they came up with is not the most appropriate one to do the thing that they're actually trying to do.
Yes, I'm working on an intranet right now, and this company has a code of conduct, and it's a really long, beautiful visual brochure. I don't know why it's a beautiful visual brochure, because, and so they're looking to create a policy library, and we're going to pick that visual brochure apart and have its chunks live separately, because nobody's looking for a beautiful visual brochure if they just want to know, what can I not do as an employee of this company? It doesn't make sense.
Maxine says, any tips on ways of bringing content design to life as part of a business change? I do love Monzo.com's tone of voice guide as a way of showcasing examples of how they apply content design to things like legal notices and instructional copy. So kind of related to what you've just been talking about.
And I was going to say, gosh, I don't know, because that's not exactly what I tend to do. But certainly creating voice and tone guidelines and message architecture is important and a really important part of every project. And again, one of my mantras in every project I do is that we're doing this with you and not to you. And that is really important. And the whole content governance and the people part of projects, I find, is the biggest challenge, right? Client whispering. So, but if we involve people in crafting the solution, crafting a better way, it has to start with helping them articulate why the current way is not working. And it might be with them, it might be with management, so that we get everybody understanding we have to do things differently, because what's happening now is just not working. And we're going to work together to come up with the right solution for us. And if they're on board with crafting the solution, they'll be much more on board with sticking to it. But if you're a smart person, you create the solution by yourself or with one internal client, and then you hand it to people, they're going to do everything they can not to follow it.
Yeah.
Because it's not their idea.
I feel like I personally have experience with that. I'm sure many other people have done that too. Yeah. And
So,
also
so things
it's
take longer, right? It's not just like writing up a 2-page guideline. It's having that workshop and inviting them in and preparing them and facilitating the conversation and then documenting what everybody says. So all of that matters. How you do it matters.
and also if you do it that way, you can establish what the benchmark is. So what is the baseline where we knew it wasn't working, and then we make some changes and we test again or we review whatever it is that matters to us. Did it improve? And
Yes.
that can be very helpful as well to persuade them for the next time, or I don't know, use as an example for somebody else.
Here's the flip side of that too. So I wrote an article for UX Booth, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but you should. A long time ago. I wrote a couple of articles. One is on content measurement and or one is on content staffing, and the other is about selling the content strategy to an executive. And the process of selling content strategy to an executive is that you know what the problem is, and you under the radar work with somebody else who understands what the problem is. So it might be one subject matter expert or one person in one department, and figure out what the solution is. And then you go to the higher up executive and you say, look, I know what the problem is. I know what the solution is. In fact, I tried a bunch of things and these things didn't work and this did. I'd like your blessing to go forward with this new approach. And then the approach is not your approach, but their approach. And once it's been kind of, and this is for a hierarchical organization that's not necessarily so collaborative, and I've worked with many of those. So if you sell it up and then it becomes the word on high, and then people have no choice but to follow a new way. That's not my preferred method, but sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah. See if anyone can find those links to the UX Booth articles and put them in
I
the chat.
can I can I can send that to you.
Well, I was actually going to do it, and I thought, no, I want to properly listen to what you're saying rather than
Oh,
be
okay. All
distracted.
right. All right.
But yeah, we'll definitely put them in the links to the email afterwards. So Bridget says, on the issue of creating/finding solutions with others, I find that some people are really busy or don't want to workshop things as it's not part of their core work. Any suggestions on how to address this? By people, I mean the aforementioned stakeholders.
I would say then you do it and give it back to them and say, if you see any egregious errors in here, let me know and I'll fix them.
Yeah, straightforward.
Yeah. Or you say, look, can I have 30 minutes of your time? So you might, draft something that's 50 or 60% polished and then ask them to work with you for the rest so that it's not taking up more time from them than is necessary.
And price goes to Lucy for immediately finding that link and putting it in the chat. So that's uxboost.com/author/Hilary Marsh. Well done, Lucy. Where else have you published or spoken that we can find things that you might have written or said?
You know, besides my website, my website's not great. Surprise, surprise. But I have some links to, podcasts that I've spoken on, and I need to do a better job at gathering everything. I'm working on that. I'm working on creating a big grid of all the things I've written and all the talks I've given, and figuring out what gaps I have so that I can put them together for people in a way that's easier to consume. And it's something that I'm doing in my spare time.
I mean, what's you sort of hinted to it earlier. What's the phrase about cobbler's children?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the phrase? I actually can't remember off the top of my head.
Cobbler's children have no shoes.
There we go. Yeah, content
And it's
designers
true.
content strategists don't have time to think about their own content strategy.
I mentioned that I'm a terrible content hoarder. So I've saved so many articles that people have written about content strategy over the years. And right now it's just in my Dropbox in a humongous PDF, content governance and management and migration and all the things that we care about. But when people go, they used to be consultants, then they go get a job, then their website goes defunct and then their stuff goes away. And I feel like our profession needs a better library to learn from, or a knowledge base. And I've tried to create that. And it's challenging because everyone sees the work through their own lens. And remember, I said all those extra words. So a library of technical content strategy content would be different than a library of content marketing content or knowledge, so it might be multiple libraries. So I'm still thinking about that.
Mm. That's useful. Yeah,
Yeah.
like a really good resource.
Yeah. So please don't let your people put up a PDF without, at the very least, like on the website that I used to run, we turned off access in the search to the raw PDF. And we only put the PDFs up on a page with a description, because the description is searchable and written by writers and written by people who know how to craft audience-centric content and pull out the takeaways. Because if the takeaways aren't in there, that's the other thing, is academic content. So academics are trained for years to write content like this. First, you have to write the abstract. Here's what I set out to do. Then you talk about who worked on this project. Then you talk about the methodology you used in the project, and you have lots of charts and graphs showing all the details. And then at the very end, then you talk about what you learned. Nobody wants to consume content like that. So if you don't have the permission or the buy-in to fix the academic document, at the very least, what you can do is put on that description that is an audience-focused description, or create derivative content from there that is about just the takeaways, for example. And then if somebody wants to read further, they can download the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's that bite, snack, meal approach to content.
Yeah, and it's the inverted triangle as well that journalists use to kind of start with the most important thing and then come out from there.
Yes. I want to check Sarah's plain English. I think I have that, and there's another list of bookmarks too. UX, I think. These are great comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Do you have any more questions for Hilary while we have
I often have conversations with people about plenty of these same things. So if you want to get in touch, the final slide I had was all the ways you can reach me, which I can put up again.
And David's saying if you don't create the alt version of a research paper, some AI you don't control will try and do it for you. Yes.
No kidding. So I think I flashed through this one really quickly, but if I can be of help to you anytime, feel free to get in touch, for real.
That's a very kind offer. Thank you, Hilary. So if we don't have any more questions, we'll wrap up here. So thank you again. That was really, really useful talk. Lots of interesting things to think about and new ways to think. And thank you to everybody on the call as well for being so engaged and asking so many questions. It's really good to have that conversation going.